Welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. Oh man, this podcast, our podcast, and Camden, you remember what I said I was going to do, and I didn't remember to do it. It's what is our podcast? Our podcast is about business and getting into the story of our guests and why they do what they do. What's their purpose? What's driving them? And having them share the stories so that others can learn. Now that I flubbed up yet another introduction because our listeners are used to it, I'd like to say hi to my good friend and buddy from the other side of the mountain range, because Mark Cook, whose mountains are on the wrong side of the highway.
Hey, I don't even know where you guys are. Where are you, Denver or something?
Yeah, I am. Camden just has brown mountains, so that doesn't count down in the desert.
Bless the mountains either way, right?
That's right. So one of the things that ties us all together, besides this innate desire to help other people succeed in life, is rugby. And man, there is nothing that Camden and I love more than when we've got a rugby guy on the show, because I love my rugby analogies about life. And what I really want to know, I want to get into this first one. What's a lesson that you learned on the pitch that you still apply today?
Oh, wow. There's 100 of those. My coach, Larry Gelwicks, is kind of famous. We were the national champions, Highland Rugby Club, and he had a movie made about him, Forever Strong. And the funny thing is, I go to the preview, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know that we kind of inserted you in some of this." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, when the father goes and looks, or the son goes and looks at his father and is surprised by the team picture, who's the bad guy?" He goes, "We kind of changed your nose and put some crutches on you and used your picture. I hope it's all right to be the bad guy." But in all seriousness, it's funny that you ask that, because there's a ton of life lessons and there's some team lessons, obviously, and always kick someone backwards, not forward, and stuff like that. But what you're asking me is a complete surprise, and I'll give you the off the top of my head from my current practice. So one of the things that we deal with as consultants, and when we find ourselves, as I do, in small group coaching, I've got some serious companies with serious research in my past. We really dug into some things that work, and they work. The problem and challenge is you actually have to do them. And so to get another human to do something for their own benefit and their client's benefit is not always a super simple task. But the lesson I learned from rugby, it's so fascinating sometimes when you get to the end of the season, because you're not wearing helmets and pads like you do in football, and sometimes it gets to be a little bit of a grind and you're kind of bruised up. And I've got to admit, because I'm a little wimpier than you, I just feel like, oh man, the game's early today. It's at 8 a.m, and I've got to get in there, and something happens. The very first hit you make, all that goes away. And you are thrilled with adrenaline, and you're fighting, and you're sprinting, and you're grasping, and you're running, and it just takes that little moment. It just takes the first one. And so, most of my practice is leadership and helping leaders get unstuck, and then those that are unstuck, helping them thrive with a leadership system and a problem-solving methodology. But I also keep getting pulled into sales because I have a sales couple of books and background. And if several of my tactics work really well with sales, one of them is prospecting. And people hate to pick up the phone every day. No one wants to call someone that they're not buddies with. And it's funny, if you do things through referrals and references that you should know, never selling to your friends, but always connecting with your friends to get to other people in a very value offering way. Give them one appointment where you just give and you don't sell anything. What happens is you start dialing the number on your phone to get to your old buddy, and you realize as soon as you dial the fourth number that his name or her name comes up. And all of a sudden, you go from, oh, I don't want to make this call, to, hey, I get to talk to Charles Van Alstyne. I haven't talked to him for 2 years. I get to talk to him. And the feeling just changes, and adrenaline shoots, and like, Charles, and he comes back the other, Mark, what's going on? Where have you been all my life? And all of a sudden, you're into people, which is all that life's about. So I got to say that's probably a very strange, esoteric lesson from rugby, but the first hit's how you get into stuff.
I love that because I rugby and phone calls, I am that kind of a person. I needed the first hit, whether I was getting hit or making the hit. I had to get hit at least once to get my head into the game, every single game. And it was always one of those, you find that hit earlier, you get more minutes of being in the game, right? You got to find that hit as fast as you can. And I think that's the thing with calls, too. I've always been one, kind of anxious around phone calls, that type of thing. And it's like the first hit, it's like hit and dial. And it's like there's the nerves, like the kickoff, the ball's in the air. But then as soon as they answer that hello, that, like you're saying, Mark, that's that first hit. And then you're in after that. And I think the big lesson there is that, again, just like the faster you get that first hit in the rugby game, the more of that 80 minutes you're going to be in the game. Well, the faster you dial that phone, the faster you're going to get out of that anxiety, and the faster you're going to be having that conversation. And once you're talking with somebody, it's a lot easier, right?
10 before 10, and it's just the first one. Yeah. I do, Otis, you probably have something to say, but can I just add one other little lesson, or do you have something on that one?
No, please, man.
This one's also funny, I think, is that there were a couple of twins, and I love them. I think one has passed, sadly. I haven't seen them for a long time. They were younger than I was, but one of my early years playing, I was a kid. I was like 18 years old, and they cheap shotted me when I was on a different team. So I had played for another team for a second, and we were on opposite sides, and the ref didn't show up, which happens in some of these informal games. And so Larry, the famous Larry Gelwicks, is the ref. And I'm not playing for him at the moment. And these guys cheap shot me. And they're friends, which was fairly odd, but they do a little cheap shot. Now, most people don't realize that there's only one ref in rugby, but there's 15 players on each side. So there's 30 people to keep track of and one ref instead of 22 with 80 refs, Yeah. So, and replay, right? So there's no replay in rugby. You're in a field somewhere. But they cheap shotted me, and I was so mad. And the instinctual thought came like, there's one ref. He's never going to see. He's watching the ball over there. So I chase one down from behind, and I just clip him really hard, put him on the ground. And suddenly I hear the whistle blow, and I had a long conversation with my former and then, future coach, Larry, and he was quite upset. Let's just say that. So this is another lesson, like, you always think you're out in society, and I've done this too in pretty decent ways. Like, you think no one's watching, and you do something you could do better or do right, but you don't. You miss the mark, and I think it was a lesson. That little moment was an interesting lesson. Like, people are watching, especially today. Do what's right. Do what's good, and I get better at that all the time. I'm about 30 years from really being good at that, but it's a lesson I learned in rugby.
No, that's a great one. And one of the things that's always fascinated me since you and I first started talking is the amount of research that you've done on these things. So that's an inherent, truthfully, that's an inherent, I don't want to understate it and say it's a simple thing, but it's such a true aspect, character is what you do when nobody is watching, that sort of thing. And a lot of times you don't realize somebody is watching you. But what I think is fun for me, and my curiosity antenna always goes up when I chat with you, is what's the research behind that? What's the data? I mean, because you spent a lot of time diving into the academic side of everything that you and I have talked about in the leadership and life side that, I just kind of learned the hard way. You've learned it the hard way, but then you went over here and read books about it and went to courses and did deep research.
People are starting to yawn and leave the episode as soon as you say the word research. So
that's right.
Stop
Don't give us
research. I do actually believe in. This is how I view it. I've got a couple of degrees and such, and I believe in rigorous research. But I'm not going to say the word again. I
dare you not to say it again. I dare you.
And I just broke the rule, but you started the show saying you'd like to dig into people's stories, and I wasn't going to tell my story, but I've got. Can I tell a story that's a little more interesting than the word research? When I was young, sadly, my father passed away, and I was just starting high school. I was 15. My mom thought you need to get a job to keep him out of trouble, and we needed money, frankly. And so she pushes me into this bagging job. The baggers across the street that were working 7 days a week were making $15 an hour. I was making $2.85. The minimum wage at that point was $3.85. I still can't figure that out. But anyway, so a little child labor going on, and I went to that work the first day, and I was just terrified as this young 15-year-old, and I was in a different school district. I was over in the enemy's land, and there they are coming and going, and the parents are coming and going, and I'd never been at a job, and so I don't know how I was 15 doing it either. That's another question I've never resolved. But this guy named Dave was given to me by, I'll call him Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown said, do whatever Dave says. And Mr. Brown was a very stern boss, old school boss, and Dave was a nice guy. He lives right by me. I love the guy. So he goes, so here's how you bag, here's how you do it. And I went to the first check stand, prime time, first Saturday. Here we go. I've learned my craft. And I'll call her Mrs. Queen. It's not her name, but there's Mrs. Queen. I know her daughter from elementary school. I say hi to her. I start bagging, and we start heading out to the car. And as I hit the lip of the driveway, which is a little bit of a hill, the bottles of glass Pepsi fly off the cart, breaking like a firework right in front of traffic, in front of everyone. And she's like, and I instinctively leave it there, pull out a 20 from my wallet, run in and point it at Mr. Brown, and he's like, I don't want your money, go clean up the mess. I come back in, and Dave Croft, I just said his name. I didn't want to say his whole name. And then pull his last name out. He doesn't want all my attention. Anyway, so he comes up to me and goes, hey, don't worry about that. We've all dumped those dumb glass bottles. You're doing great. Get in there. So the next Saturday comes. There's Mrs. Queen again. I'm like, oh, boy. So I go to her stand. We bag it. I'm careful. I do it right this time. They're vertical, not horizontal. We charge out. She's in a little bit of a hurry. She's fast-paced, not on a jog, but a little bit of a trot. But decides as she gets to the door, as she sees, well, you'll see in any door in a grocery store, the magazines that are free. She sees something that catches her attention, and she puts on the brakes and stops. And you can guess where the front bar of that grocery cart that was full went right into her Achilles tendon, And she starts screaming in front of the whole city in the front of the store. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I look at Mr. Brown and he's waving his finger at me. But Dave pulls me to the back and he goes, you know, I think we've all done that once or twice too. And you're doing great. Just keep going. Trust me. Just keep going. Okay. Here's the finale. My success. Third Saturday comes. There's Mrs. Queen. And by the way, in that store, we always followed people out to the car. We could never not do that unless they told us not to. We just did it. It was old school. And so I see her open up and I walk the other way. I don't want any of that. And all of a sudden I hear Mr. Brown over the PA. Mark Cook, check stand 2, Mark Cook, check stand 2. And so I go over to Mrs. Queen and I'm like, hey, Mrs. Queen, I'm so sorry about last week. And I bagged the groceries and I am determined to do everything perfect. So I stay away, and we're going out, I'm careful over the seam. We get to the back of the car, and as you know, we all do this. We pack the groceries in the corner, and I did that in the back, put blankets and whatever to keep them up. And then in victory, I throw that hatchback down hard. But the problem was the corner landed right in her scalp, and she buckled to her knees. Went, oh! Right in front of everyone again. And I was going in to quit. Gosh. I was done. I thought, this is it, you know. So in my head, I was quitting. I walked in. Dave grabbed my arm. He walked me clear to the back. He goes, now I'm going to be honest with you. I've never done that. But I want to tell you something. I've watched you with the parents. I've watched you with us enemy kids. And you're amazing. You're going to get promoted pretty quick here. You just have to keep going because we all do bad things. And that was coming off a finger wagging for the third time from my real boss. And it was a lesson, a couple of things. You know, I became at that young age without a dad, and my mom had never been in the workforce back in that day and age. And I was thirsty to know how the heck do you do something right at work? And I experienced instantly my first month on the job how to lead and how not to lead. And who was the leader in that case? My friend Dave. And so I've never since taken a job where I don't have to really dive into that in some way. I just caught the bug. And of course, I grew up at Franklin Covey, was accentuated that, and worked for Stephen Covey, both of them. And just thought, wow, ideas are powerful. Like, you can really change someone's life with a better idea than they have. And so even as a CEO or executive, I've always taken the jobs that allow me to investigate people's work. And the thing you're talking about is I've investigated 2 million award-winning leaders and really terrible outcomes too, in very interesting ways with Harvard, Cambridge, Stanford PhDs. Really digging into what really works in certain situations. And I don't know everything, but there's 10 or 20 things that happen at work that I know a lot about. So anyway, that's a long answer, but that's how this all started.
So that leads me to the next thing of, well, what brought that love of it? I mean, would you say you in the line of life, right? You know, and the points, the grocery store, the rugby team, were they intentional or were they head up, saw something, or the third option, because we're going to give you 3 options on this. Was it a tap on the shoulder by Dave who said, hey, come over here and do this sort of thing, or somebody else, of course?
Well, I know it's not popular today, but I've had experiences in life that I believe in providence. I believe there's a higher being, and I've got to tell you, I did not try to get into this field. Like I can trace like 10, 20 things. I had an opportunity to go with Sun Microsystems at one point when I was really young that paid $50,000 more than I had the second offer. But I took the second offer because I saw I might be able to write a book and do some research and investigate. Because I even today, like I said, I'm pretty clear about 10 or 20 things on leadership and work after this. It's really interesting. One of the things we did, there's many ways to do research. We've read journals, we've investigated journals with 2 massive teams. We do all sorts of things. I do them in more interesting ways, hopefully, than surveys alone. One of the things, I was in Denver actually for one of these. So we would go all over North America, Canada, and the United States, teeny bit in Mexico, and we do these focus groups, and we'd have leaders come in to just kind of flesh out. This is not the empirical part; it's the discovery of additional related things that help you communicate it. But you bring a bunch of leaders in repetitively all over the continent and dig into some of these things you've discovered in the previous work and talk about it. You don't dare to talk about it alone first because people just make stuff up and they don't even realize it. So you have to investigate the truth first and then you talk about it, right? So we bring them into the room. They're behind the two-way glass, so they can't see us. Of course, they know someone's there. But we like on TV and in a cop station, in a police station, we interrogate them about a particular topic. And then what's fun is they don't know that followers are coming in after. And the followers don't know that the leaders have been in there before. So you excuse them, give them their prize, sayonara, pay them. And then all of a sudden this big host of followers comes in to talk about the same topic. And they don't even sound the same. Like, I do this so great, and this is what we do. And the follower comes in and says, he doesn't have a clue about that, and he doesn't ever do that. And I wish I was recognized for my work every week. And he recognizes me once every 10 years or, something like that. And the leader's like, I recognize the great work he does every week. And, there's just this disconnect. So you really have to dig into the truth and do it multiple ways to figure out what's really going on. And I don't know everything. I've got 10 or 20 things I'm pretty clear on, but there's the rest of life, which is infinite, that I don't know a lot about. But that's a big, long answer to the research and whether I chose this or not. I'd made some decisions along my career path that led here, but I was really trying to make money for my family, and these opportunities did present themselves to me, and they were always unusual. And then I'm independent now because I had a spine infection for 4 months horizontal with an IV in my heart. So I was doing this for other people before, and now I'm doing it for myself, Windfall Partners.
One of the things talking about the research that comes to mind, in trying to measure any of those weird social leadership type things, it's really difficult because you have people reporting feelings and their thoughts, and it's like there's so many layers of disconnects there. And you kind of already answered this, but I was curious: do leaders have the same self-reporting bias that you see in folks, or is it a little bit better, or are they a little bit more honest with themselves?
No, we're all human. I'll tell you a little trick that is very important as you're having conversational versions of research or even written, is to ask about a specific instance and access their episodic memory. And episodic memory is by far our most powerful memory. I could give you my Social Security. I won't because you're recording this. But it's only 9 numbers. I can give it to you right now. I've done this in 5 years of night college classes with professionals that I've taught. So, I give them my 9 digits. I say, okay, who remembers it? Right after. No one remembers it even close. But then I tell them a 5 or 8 minute story like I just did a couple of times with you guys, and they know every single tiny detail. Mm-hmm. What brand was the pop that spilled? Pepsi. What color was the bar on the cart? Gray, silver, every little detail that I've said in that story arc that exists within our episodic memory, they remember. Now, it's not always accurate. That's been proven in eyewitness accounts and things like that. But eyewitness accounts are more of a flash. They're not someone experiencing their own, as the protagonist, their own episode in life. So episodic memory is really powerful. So if you're trying to find out something from someone, you really want to ask them, like, hey, this is an instance that happened, or that problem happened when most recently? And then you want to start them at the beginning, just go through the arc. What was the beginning? What was the transitional, that thing that caused the inciting incident, the thing that started the action? And then what was the challenge? What was the climb up the hill to achieve what you want or do or get or, fall in love, whatever. And then at the top, what was the climax? Like the do or die, face to face. This is it. It's like decision time, time to target, as Otis would say. What happened? And they talk about that. And then how did it resolve itself? How did people get better or worse? So if you want to talk to someone and get the most accurate, truthful information, you just want to go to a specific episode. You want to pull out their memory in an arc format. And then you at least understand the problem or opportunity. But if you just say, hey, what should we do with this product? What do you think? And they don't reflect on their own problems or situation. They're just dreaming. And then you hear all these great ideas. You're like, yeah. And you say, okay, get out your wallet. And they're like, well, no, I'm not. No. So people make stuff up, even if they're leaders.
You just touched on something I think is in my mind. I'm just going, dang it, stupid Army doing it again. Because what you just described in this episodic memory is the process that I learned years ago in the Army to do an after-action review, in a more formal sense of, we've completed an event or an exercise or an operation or whatever. And right then and there, we talk through it in that story sense. And I'd never heard the academic side of it. And that's what you just described is exactly how we do it. Hey, what happened at the beginning? What was that like? To walk the mind back through those conditions. So I'm fascinated by the academic side and also frustrated with the dang it, stupid Army got it right. Really?
I hate it when they get it right.
That's right.
Well,
let
me say something quick about that. I think that, science chases reality. I mean, I'm a big believer in science, but boy, the world's trying to make science their new religion. It's a bad idea because, I could give you all the academic rigor and the people from Harvard, Cambridge, and Stanford that helped me, and I could give you all the numbers that I've talked about. But I'll tell you do the tests that I do in that night class with professionals. You just see it happen. It's just reality. It's not science. It's reality. So, go home, throw your Social Security number at your wife, and then tell her a little story you've never told her before that happened to you. Make it as long as you want. Make it as short as you want, but express the detail in an arc form. The life before, the inciting incident, the climb to pursue the plot. Then the climax and the resolution, you present it in that format. You can ask her a week later, what color was the shopping cart? She'll go, silver gray,
Yep.
Or whatever. What was the brand? Was it Coke? No, Pepsi. People will just throw it out. So it's just reality.
I think That's such an interesting idea. Science chases reality. It's actually in the reading I was doing this morning. Sorry, Dad, still Frank, and I haven't finished all those essays. But one of the things he's talking about is the gap of like asking scientific questions versus what he called like purposeful questions. And that when you try to use science to answer purposeful questions, you wind up with a lot of gaps, because when you go scientifically, you need facts, you need concrete stuff. But when you're in purpose, it's more theory, it's more connecting things where it's like you can see that A is causing C, but you don't know what B is, and that's okay. Whereas in the scientific, when you're trying to lay it out by facts, you don't necessarily get that opportunity. You have to identify B. And the interesting thing there, I think, is in that reality, as a leader, how do you apply these lessons for yourself? And we talk all the time about, like the doctor heal thyself type moment. Well, you've got all these lessons, Mark. How's your leadership ability,
Yeah. Well, you've just pinned me down on one of the great tragedies of my life, actually. So, one of the things I'm really sad about, actually, is that all this research came after being a CEO and after my turnarounds and after helping someone else make $123 million, and I got a kitchen. So things don't always play out as
I got to absorb that one a minute.
Yeah, you should. I'm trying to still. But I'll tell you, it's inspiring. Really, joy in life. I mean, I don't know that the purpose of life is happiness in the sense of fun and excitement happiness. It's more on the side of joy and fulfillment happiness. That allows you to face the opposition that's in any story, on any path, in any leadership experience, or in any followership experience. And that joy is an important goal for sure. And it's even more important if you're going to spend your day doing anything. It really should be about other people, which sounds like a cliche, but it's just mathematically the case. Anyone who's studied this, if someone's really intent on serving a target market and a persona, which really is, get this, they're really human beings. The marketing science wants to call them something else, but they're really people. They just happen to be a particular identifiable group of people. So, those are human beings that you're serving. And if you're, the top two priorities in business are purpose and profit. And if you get the order wrong, bad things happen in the long run, not the short run. The people that are chasing profit and money for themselves, sadly in this life, they often get what they want, and the rest of us scratch our head and say, man, that didn't pay off to try to help other people that much. But in the long run, at some point, it plays out, usually in a decade or so, and that's way too long to be patient for some. But man, if you get my age and you blink, a decade's like a day. So, the long run comes fast, and if you prioritize purpose for others, what's their purpose? What's their problem? What's their pain I'm trying to resolve? And you focus there, boy, it gets very commercial. Like, you have big opportunities. In fact, it's really the only opportunity. One of the things, to just go to the core of your first part of the question, how have I used this? I've got to tell you, I have used it in my current business. I eat my own soup, so to speak. And I get stuck too. I get stuck. Being an entrepreneur after being in big companies is a roller coaster ride for sure. I've had my best years financially. I've had my worst year on one of those years. And shockingly, in a gathering business like speaking and consulting, it was during the front end of the pandemic. But guess what? The second year of the pandemic was my best financial year ever. So I get stuck too. I have to get unstuck. And I went through my own process, and it works. And I have no doubt that it works. But one of the keys that ties everything that we've been talking to together is the other place that I use episodic memory in my practice is in vision. The word vision is such a ubiquitous, meaningless word in business now. Business hijacked it. It's a cool word, so we just say it all the time. But a vision, really, if you think about what a vision is, It's this episode you see in your mind.
Yep.
That's what it is. It's not some general business idea. It's literally this episode you see in your mind. And in my business research, I discovered that the tiny little rare leaders at the top that have the extraordinary client outcomes and the extraordinary financial outcomes have a very clear vision of the vision. And it is something that's just beyond the horizon that no one can see. But they've done the work, they've done the thinking to piece together the elements of a scene, of an episode that are in people's memory and cause emotion, things like setting and keeping the client, the protagonist, and you cast, the partners, the vendors, what has to happen in the channel, and you get very clear on the future of bettering the lives of those that target market, those human beings, in a new way. You know, if people mix up the words of strategy all the time, vision, mission, purpose, values, it's all just a big mess that employees ignore when the executives come home from playing golf. And they shouldn't be. They're very useful. They're very specific. And if you have that vision clear and you're using that same episodic memory we talked about, boy, people can see it. They can see it in their own mind as you describe the words in a team meeting, in an individual conversation, at a casual lunch, as you take someone to the suite because of an incentive that they achieved. And, there's places that leaders are constantly over-communicating the destination at the end of the path, the vision, just over the horizon. And people start to see that place where customers are better and teammates are better off, and we're all achieving and fulfilling, and that's a place people pursue instinctively, and you don't have to manage them every day to do stuff. So that's one place that I've really used some of this learning, and I didn't have that when I was leading, sadly. I wish I had. But I'm leading.
Talking about vision, I think one of the things that you need to get that vision is we talk about, whether it's, you talk about mindfulness, meditation, whatever it is, it's that kind of like intentional stillness where you can then look towards that, the episode, as you put it, Mark. What I want to ask, though, is because you had a very unique experience. You were talking about being stuck horizontal for 4 months. That's not designed stillness, that's forced stillness. And I just want to hear what did you get out of that as far as vision, purpose, any of those kind of things? Because I think forced stillness is a very fascinating thing. Because designed stillness is useful. You get 15 minutes of stillness in your day, that can do a lot. 4 months of forced stillness?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's two answers. One's predictable and one is completely counterintuitive. The predictable answer is that I went independent. 4 months horizontal is not very good for your employment situation. Even if you have FMLA, if you're a leader, it's different than if you're an employee. So not conducive to good employment being, on your back for 4 months. So I became independent. And you would say, well, oh, that was forced. Well, no. When I went into that last job, when that happened, my wife and I actually went into that job saying, okay, this one, we're going to put up with some weekends and nights where I reconstitute my own methods and things I'm not able to do during the day in leadership and work environment and results. And we're going to create a leadership model with a problem-solving method and a better way to sell, frankly. And we did that intentionally. I had no idea that I was going to have a spine infection in it. I had no idea it was then going to go septic. And both, I have a recording of a doctor who studies sepsis quite a bit. He said I should be dead for sure. And I'm not. Here I am. And so that leads me to the counterintuitive answer, which is, you would say, hey, Mark, you seem like you're a person of faith and you have a lot of meaning, and I am a meaning junkie, and I love vision and things like that. But I was just on painkillers and trying to stay comfortable my back hurt like a spear was in it, hot and twisting for a long time. So like meaning's tough when that kind of opposition rears its head. And I'll tell you, I got through some of the pain parts and started to come out of it and started to forget the pain and was on my own in the pressures of business. And I took my wife to breakfast because I wanted to give her the meaning. Like, wow, that was meaningful. We're on our own and we did it. And thank you. I'm so grateful. And I said a comment at the end of our breakfast or lunch or whatever it was. I said, I just wanted to take you here to just make this formal that I'm so grateful. I cried in the car. I won't take you through the whole story, but the first engagement I had after that, she had to take me and give me an IV during lunch. And, it was very strange and awkward. I had to kind of be discreet about all that with the clients, but she did it. And so I got in that car with her help, having been vertical the first time, and I wept like a baby. I was so grateful to her. So I take her to lunch a month later. I say, I want to make this formal. I'm so grateful, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, I made this comment where I said, hey, isn't it amazing that that's one of the best experiences we've ever had? And I just said that from my perspective, thinking my perspective is everyone's perspective. And she shot back at me pretty violently, like, no, that was a catastrophe. What I had to do for you is crazy. And no, not yet. We're not going there yet. And, her perspective is my caregiver having to do everything. And, it was a lesson that our perspective is not the perspective. Our perspective is one part. We're staring at the elephant, sometimes at the tail, which is not a great view. And we need to be patient with others that are standing on other sides of the elephant, as the metaphor goes. Anyway, long answer, but that's my answer.
Oh, I love that because it reminds me of the little T truth versus the big T truth, right?
Yeah.
What I see is my truth, and that's the little T. And then what you see, what he sees, what she sees, those are all their little T's. But there is a big T out there that is the real truth, and that's the when you start to understand that and come to that reality, that's a beautiful place to be and start to have that that broader understanding.
Yeah, let me just say one other thing about that. That's I'll keep it quick for this, and we can move on to the last home stretch. But one of the big insights to answer your previous question and connect the two that I am so excited and grateful and passionate about now. I interviewed the inventor of GPS, Brad Parkinson, Dr. Brad Parkinson. Fascinating story. It's going to be one of my episodes coming up, piecing it together. But it's a complex story. He led 5 very complex teams to invent GPS. And he's terrific. He's an amazing leader. But he's the one that instilled this idea that you have to have a point where you're at your current location. And then you have to have this vision that's out there beyond the horizon that is unseen. And as a leader, it's your job to paint the vision of that because that's the destination. And during that conversation, it's not even an analogy. It's just a different version of reality that you can spend $2 billion, which is what we spend, $2 billion a year on GPS system to provide it free for the world. But a couple of things. First of all, don't get mad at the government because it's the most lucrative project, one of the most lucrative projects we've ever had in the United States because the industries that have spawned from GPS are extraordinary. I think the last number was like 60 billion a year or something. I mean, we love that project. But anyway, so, you can spend $2 billion a year on a system, but it's worthless unless you not only know, which you automatically know, where you are today, but what's the other information you have to give it?
Where are you going?
Where you're going. If you don't give it a destination, useless. So we go to work and we're leaders and give people documents and pages and strategies full of information and English symbols that they're supposed to interpret. And he taught me, because of a future project that's coming, it's called Pathway in the Skies, where they change all those dials in English in a cockpit. They change them to a HUD, which is a heads-up display, as you know, and you're seeing a path as the pilot. And this fuel efficiency skyrockets. Even on a single flight, they're saving thousands of tons of fuel. And the safety goes up dramatically. Why? He pointed out, we have, as our most fundamental feature as human beings, the ability to see a target, pursue the path, and avoid obstacles, or try to. And that innate primary capability that we have, that many organisms share, is so valuable as a leader. Because if you say, okay, we're here, but our destination is there, and here's what it looks like, then that presents an opportunity to create a path in between. And so my system actually creates steps that are critical to leadership on a path. But you hit obstacles, you hit things in your way. So the New York Times bestseller since then I've added the human side, like how do you interact and how do you coordinate and collaborate the activities of problem solving. So you follow the path, but you have a problem solving method that you can quickly overcome obstacles and figure out challenges that you have. And it's really, I'll whisper, it's really rapid innovation tactics. I call it problem solving because leaders dare to take that on. But, it only takes a morning or two to really hit something hard with it. So it's not like we're talking about inventing something that takes years. It's just problem solving.
That's
Purpose
great.
is a path. Leadership is a path,
Yeah.
It's an art, like the story. It's what it is.
And the story is something that, for me, what I learned, sometimes you do things. We've had this conversation a couple of times on the show, feels like lately, that you do things and you don't have a label for it, but we create the definition. And today I learned a definition, and that's the episodic memory.
Yeah.
I didn't know I'd been using that. And that for me is what I learned today. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Mark, you said this science chases reality. I know we talked about it some. That's something that is very relevant in all the economic stuff I read. And that's such an easy way to put it. Just the science chasing the reality that we can all see. How often do I go to your dad and I say, hey, I read this book where the guy discovered that you want something that's cheaper. Well, you say, yeah, shit, Camden, I knew that. So science is chasing the reality.
But it's important to explain things. Those are two completely unexpected values I would never have guessed. So I'm grateful that you shared those with me.
How about you, Mark? What'd you learn?
Well, in our conversations, this one's unexpected too. I really, in the pre-show, I really respect how you treat each other. Otis and I met first. I knew Otis first. He's been on my show and haven't produced it yet, but it's coming. And I just listened and watched him interact with you, Camden, and that's 2/3 of leadership, how you are human, and whether you let business talk you into that you're something besides human. And Otis and Camden, how you treated each other seemed right. So that's what I got out of it.
Well, thank you. That's great to hear. How do folks find you, get in contact with you, follow you, see where you're going next?
Okay, if you want me to speak for your group, it's easy to remember my name. There's a million Mark Cooks, so you have to remember the whole name. MarkSpencerCook.com. All the normal spellings, so that's easy. And my company is windfallpartners.com. And you can set an appointment with me there to just brainstorm for a minute without obligation. I love brainstorming events, and even another speaker. You don't have to pick me. I'm glad to give you ideas and things. And then I do consulting. I have a 10 series. It usually ends up plus or minus that because of the situation. But I go meet briefly. I only meet a half hour with people each week because we get right to business. We do stuff. We don't just talk. We do. And I literally do things with them. And so that's another reason you can set up an appointment. And then my phone number's 801-652-3393. Send me a text. And finally, my email, well, I guess mark at windfallpartners.com is my email. But I guess finally, I'm not a big social media person, but if you want to reach me through LinkedIn or social media, all of my handles are Mark Spencer Cook with no space.
Awesome, man. That's great, and thank you again for the time today and sharing with us these stories so that we can all learn those lessons more deeply and actually remember them. So, really appreciate your time today, Mark.
You bet. I'm grateful for your new friendship. That's what I'm grateful for. Look forward to being friends forever. So
Thanks. I like that. Great. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Mark Cook, for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass it along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis Show on Facebook and Instagram, and you can watch full videos of the show on our YouTube page. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button too. As always, the full archive of our episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.
We did it!